Welcome to the Addiction Mindset Recovery Coaching YouTube channel. In today's video, we're going to do a deep dive into Cannabinoid Hyperemesis Syndrome, also known as CHS, something that I struggled with as a result of a cannabis addiction or a cannabis substance use disorder. Now, in today's video, I'm going to cover a few different things. We're going to talk about what CHS is, complicating factors, the causes or the potential causes of cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, a timeline for recovery from it, and then I'm going to give you guys some of my best practices to things that you can do at home to help yourself recover if this is something you're suffering with. Now, if you're new to the channel, my name's Dr. Frank. I'm the owner of Addiction Mindset Recovery Coaching Services, and my goal is to make sobriety accessible to everyone. If you need help at the end of today's video, I have a free PDF on recovering from cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome. So check out the link in the pinned comment in the video description to download that if you need more help. Okay, let's jump right into it. So the first thing I need you to know about cannabis is that it's a paradoxical drug, okay? And what that means is when you have just the right amount, just the right quantity, cannabis can help with things like anxiety and nausea and stomach problems. But if you take too much of it or you go overboard, it's going to have a paradoxical effect, which means the opposite effect. This is where you see someone who smokes weed for anxiety, but then they start getting paranoia and panic attacks. This is where you see someone who uses cannabis for nausea, but now they're constantly throwing up every time they consume cannabis. You need to understand that first. Now, secondly, if you know what CHS is, which we're going to talk about in a moment, I want you to keep in mind, once this condition develops, I promise you, there is no pleasure, there is no joy, there is no scenario that you are going to be able to recreate or recapture through continued consumption of cannabis that's going to feel good. And for those of you struggling with this, I just want you to keep that in the back of your mind throughout today's video. So what is CHS or Cannabinoid Hyperemesis Syndrome? And I got notes here because this is a long video. So it typically comes in 3 stages. And CHS, or that syndrome, is basically referring to nonstop vomiting or throwing up from consuming cannabis, okay? Stage 1 is the prodromal phase. During this phase, it can last a few weeks, a few months, or people can be stuck in stage 1 for like years. This typically involves nausea, usually very present in the mornings. It often involves some body pain, joint pain, muscle pain. Typically, there's a lot of fatigue. You might see a decreased appetite, and that decreased appetite might result in weight loss and malnutrition for the person who's struggling with it. When I had stage 1 of CHS, I had lost about 20 pounds. I was constantly in muscle pain. I could barely do any physical activity because the pain would be so intense from having this condition. Something else that I want to make very clear here. During stage 1 of CHS, which can last a few weeks, a few months, or even a few years, people can be stuck in this stage. They often think that cannabis is helping them with these things. They'll be like, oh, I'm nauseous, but if I smoke a little bit, I can finally eat again. Oh, I have body pain, but if I smoke a little bit, it makes it go away temporarily. People fail to realize, and I was people, that cannabis is actually causing these problems to be worse, but it's confusing because you might get some temporary relief. Stage 2 is known as the hyperemesis stage. This means vomiting, the vomiting stage. So this is usually where we see really intense vomiting. It could be a few times a week. It could be a few times an hour that the person is throwing up, okay? This is often where we'll see a person admitted to the ER or the emergency room, and they're usually going there resulting from dehydration and malnutrition. And this can get really bad because that dehydration and malnutrition can lead to heart problems, and it can also result in kidney failure and potentially death if it's not treated effectively. Now, this stage can last for weeks or months or even years if someone can make it that long with this stage before it's often properly diagnosed. Usually they don't diagnose this until your third, fourth, fifth ER visit. And I can tell you, for me, I was seeing a million different doctors trying to figure out what was wrong with me, why I had this body pain, why I had this crazy fatigue, why I was having all these kind of autoimmune issues. And I was getting diagnosed with like random autoimmune diseases. They were doing random autoimmune disease testing. And at the end of the day, I had CHS. I had Cannabinoid Hyperemesis Syndrome. Now, stage 3 of this is known as the recovery stage. And it can take, we'll talk about timelines in a little bit later on in this video, but it can take a few weeks, it can take a few months to recover from this condition. But the recovery stage is where the person has completely stopped consuming any and all forms of cannabis whatsoever, and then their body starts to heal and they start to get better. And that's the beautiful thing about CHS. Once you know you have it, and once you quit consuming cannabis, all these symptoms will go away. Now the catch is CHS has the ability to come back or flare back up even after years of not consuming cannabis if you consume cannabis again. I want to talk a little bit about complicating factors to CHS. A lot of people who struggle with CHS also happen to have a cannabis substance use disorder or an addiction to cannabis. And that can be a problem because in some cases, people have become physically dependent upon cannabis to eat, to sleep, to socialize, to get through day-to-day life. They've become physically dependent upon it. And that's a problem because if CHS is causing you to vomit and throw up and lose weight and get malnourished, but you physically need cannabis because you can't sleep without it, you can't function without it, you can't eat without it, this becomes complex because continuing to consume it is quite literally killing you. But not consuming it might throw you into physical and psychological withdrawal symptoms from stopping the use of cannabis. And where this gets confusing is a lot of people will quit using cannabis. Their CHS symptoms will initially seem to get worse: the nausea, the headaches, the fatigue, the body pain, the flu-like symptoms, the irritability, all that stuff. But what's actually happening is the CHS is getting better, but now you're experiencing the physical withdrawal symptoms of stopping the use of cannabis. And then people will get confused on my channel and they'll ask me, wait, do you get CHS from quitting cannabis? No, you get CHS while you're consuming cannabis. You can or may experience physical withdrawal symptoms when you quit, and those physical withdrawal symptoms can either add to the CHS symptoms or they can mimic CHS. But you don't get Cannabinoid Hyperemesis Syndrome from quitting cannabis. That's how you fix it. But you might get some of the withdrawal symptoms. And a lot of times what will happen is someone will get treated for CHS, they'll get hydration, they'll get medication, whatever, they'll get better, but then no one ever addressed the addiction or the substance use disorder with them. They'll go back to consuming cannabis over and over again and getting sick and sick and sick again, which oftentimes, real quick, if that's you, I need you to understand, once you have CHS, you are never going to be able to recapture those pleasurable experiences that you once may have got from cannabis. And if that's you, I need you to let go of that mindset because you're chasing after an experience, a high that doesn't exist anymore, that you will never be able to recapture. And we have to come to terms with that when we're quitting. I know I struggled with that. A lot of people watching this video might. And again, we have links in the pinned comment and video description to help you with that. Another thing that I think is worth considering or talking about is the potential causes of CHS. And then we'll talk about timelines for recovery. So there's a few hypotheses. This isn't like solid literature. This is just what we know so far. One cause, it's the high concentration cannabis products. I think I have seen a dramatic rise in this in our coaching programs, especially among younger people. It's the cartridges, it's the dab pens, it's these really strong concentration. And listen, it's not just the black market stuff that kids are getting in high school. It's the medical grade stuff that's 30, 60, 70% THC. High concentration THC with frequent use is likely what's playing a role and this rapid development of CHS that's developing in people that's consuming. And that goes for edibles, that goes for dabs, that goes for the dab pens, that goes for really strong dry herb that you might be smoking or vaporizing. This all can add to CHS symptoms. That's cause number one. And I think the concentration, the strength is the biggest thing. That's my guess. Number two, it could be a dysregulation of your endocannabinoid system. So your body actually makes its own THC and CBD. Those are phytocannabinoids from the cannabis plant. Your body makes its own endocannabinoids. And when you're consuming a lot of cannabis from the plant, THC, CBD, all that stuff, you can create imbalances in your endocannabinoid system. And the system plays a huge role in the regulation of gut health and appetite and sleep and memory and a million other things. When that system becomes dysregulated because you overburdened your cannabinoid receptors, you might develop CHS. This is why I can't stress the importance of tolerance breaks enough. Maybe a tolerance break can help you prevent getting CHS if you want to keep consuming, but please be aware a tolerance break is not the cure to CHS. The only cure to CHS is complete abstinence of cannabis. Now, it could be genetics. You guys might know some people who consume alcohol, they don't have the same genes to break down that alcohol as other individuals do. I think it's Asian people don't have the ability to break down alcohol the same as some other demographics. You could have a highly sensitive endocannabinoid system, and now you've been consuming stronger concentrates, and boom, those genetics kicked up, and now you're having a problem with it, okay? Another possible cause is the accumulation of THC, the thing that gets you high in cannabis, in your fat cells. Remember, the active ingredient in cannabis gets stored in your body fat. And if you're consuming constantly, and not giving your body a break to detox, that THC is accumulating in your fat, and it's building up and building up and building up. The more you smoke, the more you smoke, the more you smoke, and then one day, boom, you hit a tipping point of THC stored in your fat plus what you're consuming, and you wind up vomiting, you wind up getting nausea, you wind up getting these initial stages of CHS. The other possible cause, which I don't think is as likely, I think this is a separate problem, is the possible contaminants and toxic byproducts that we're finding in these cartridges or plants these days. So even medical dispensaries are having problems with this. There's been numerous reports of medical dispensary cartridges and products testing positive for solvents, for pesticides, for fungicides, all the stuff they're supposed to clean off the weed after they grow it. They're not doing that. And that's potentially heavy metals, and that's potentially poisoning people, causing what I think mimics CHS, but is not what is actually CHS. Now, a lot of people will think like, okay, I'll use like a low quality CBD, or I'll use like a Delta 8 or a Delta 10 product from my vape shop, because that's not traditional weed. Delta 8 has horrible byproducts that are created even when you have a high quality Delta 8 product that doesn't have the heavy metals, the pesticides, the fungicides. The production of Delta 8 creates horrible byproducts, and that could potentially also be poisoning a person. I think in many cases, if someone's using like a Delta 8 product or a crappy street cartridge, or even some medical dispensary ones, they're dealing with pesticide poisoning, fungicide poisoning, heavy metal toxicity, but then they're also dealing with a separate condition called CHS, but the two of these conditions also often overlap. I want to tell you guys a little bit about the stages of recovery and the timelines from CHS. So typically the acute stage, and this is once you stop smoking, I mean like you totally stop. Most of the CHS symptoms, the vomiting, the extreme nausea, should clear up in anywhere, I'd say from 1 to 4 weeks, okay? And people might also notice like muscle twitching, intense body pain. That can take a little bit longer to go away. But like the vomiting and like the excessive dehydration, about 1 to 4 weeks, I think. Now, I want to make it clear though, you might clear up the CHS symptoms, but you might continue to experience cannabis withdrawal symptoms that could last 1 to 4 weeks. It could last a few months. You could have post-acute withdrawal symptoms or conditions from cannabis that last a lot longer than a few months. But those symptoms should not be confused with symptoms of CHS. We have to differentiate the two. So that's the acute stage, 1 to 4 weeks, the throwing up should cease. Number 2, the healing of the gut. Somewhere around 1 to 3 months, we should start to see restoration of the endocannabinoid system in the gut and a lot of the healthy gut bacteria that should be there. If you have been testing positive for candida or funguses or other problems in your gut, which likely resulted from contamination of the products that you were consuming, that often is the same thing, 1 to 6 months for healing for that to occur, okay? Then we have to consider the recovery of the brain and the endocannabinoid system itself, which is anywhere from probably, 3 to 6 months. For most people, and that's regulating dopamine, serotonin, all those other neurotransmitters that are also very important in our gut health. They often describe the brain as a second stomach, a second gut, because they share so many of the same neurochemical properties, right? So when we have CHS, not only is it a disorder of the gut, but it's very much a disorder of the brain and the central nervous system as well. And a lot of people fail to understand that. So when we're talking about recovery timelines, yes, the vomiting might go away quickly, but the prolonged recovery needs to be considered for the gut and the brain. Now, one of the things I tell people to do, one of our channel sponsors, Exploro, okay, they make test strips. So you can actually track your THC detox process. I would highly recommend this if you have CHS. They make a kit that tests the urine for 100 ng per ml, 50 ng per ml, and 20 ng per ml. So highly sensitive test strips, because if you're 20 days into quitting, a month into quitting, and you're still having really bad CHS symptoms, but you're still testing positive on an at-home drug test at 100 ng per ml, you still have a lot of stored THC in your fat, and you still have a lot of that detox process to go through. And I love testing for this condition because it helps us understand the symptoms that you're feeling and why you may be feeling those symptoms, which can also help keep you motivated and accountable. A lot of times people with CHS will quit. They're not tracking their THC detox process, and Exploro is one of the only companies I know that actually makes a kit to track that at different sensitivity levels in the urine test at home. If you're not tracking it, we have no idea where your body actually is in the detox process. So if you're still testing really positive for THC at month 2, month 3, it makes sense to me that you still might be vomiting and being sick and having symptoms. If you're not testing positive anymore, but you still have these symptoms, now I'm starting to question, maybe it's post-acute withdrawals. Maybe it's something else that we're overlooking in your health that needs to be addressed. Maybe it wasn't the cannabis. So please, if you have CHS, check out the link in the pinned comment, check out the link in the video description, and show Exploro some love, one of our channel sponsors, and pick up that 3-level test kit. I promise it will help us figure out what's going on in your body, and it helps you too. Some tips and tricks when it comes to overcoming cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, okay? The first thing is you have to stop consuming cannabis. No more cannabis consumption. And if you need help with that, sign up for our group coaching, sign up for a one-on-one coaching session. We're happy to help you get there mentally. I know how hard it is, but I promise quitting is possible. Number 2, electrolyte drinks. I like Santa Cruz Nutraceuticals, not a channel sponsor of ours, but he makes really high quality supplements that are electrolyte drinks that you can put in water. I would highly recommend that. If you need to do some sugar-free Gatorade, something like that. I was so sick, I had to freeze Gatorade into ice cubes and then suck on those throughout the day because I couldn't even keep water down. So please consider utilizing electrolyte drinks if you're dealing with this. Hot showers is going to be another major thing that can help you out, okay? I just want to caution you, a lot of people will do hot showers and they'll wind up burning themselves and creating 1st and 2nd degree burns. So we don't want to do that. Hot showers, hot baths, heating pads, capsaicin cream, it's all good to manage the body pain, but don't burn yourself. If you're going to use the sauna or really hot showers, you also have to be very careful not to dehydrate yourself. This can create dehydration, which can send you to the hospital. Talk to your doctor about anti-nausea medications. I'll leave that there. That's between you and your physician. Gentle foods. You want to think of a really simple diet. We don't want really high fat food. We don't want, food that's going to be really hard to digest. Think simple. Think like bananas, fruits, like watermelon, pineapple, like really simple things to digest. Fast acting carbs, simple carbohydrate things. When it does come to fat, if you can stomach like eggs but no sauces on them, nothing else, maybe a little bit of salt on it if you can, that would be an option. Plain chicken, plain rice, plain turkey, if you can digest that as like a protein source. And then when it comes to foods, I like bone broth. I like unflavored, either vegetarian-based protein shakes or unflavored whey protein shakes. That's an option for you, mixed in water, if you can't tolerate like a lactose-free milk or an almond milk, something like that. And then for fats, I was consuming nut butters at that time. Almond butter, cashew butter, sun butter. That worked for me, okay? When it comes to foods, I highly recommend avoiding alcohol and caffeine. And nicotine, I don't know, that's debatable. There's some research now that says nicotine might actually be beneficial for recovery in the form of like a patch or something, but I'm not gonna get into that in this video. I recommend avoiding stimulants though, generally speaking. No energy drinks, no caffeine, no alcohol. That just seems to make the body pain and all these things work. And listen, when I had CHS, I became like intolerant to so many things. Like I can't have caffeine anymore. Alcohol I could barely have anymore. Like I don't drink anymore for other reasons, but like pay attention to that. Because if you're getting the really bad body twitching that I had, like in my eyes and my arms and my back and my stomach and even my legs, get rid of the caffeine. That should be a big help. But again, keep in mind, caffeine is gonna take like a while to detox. Caffeine stores not only in your body, but it can store in your bones and like other places. So caffeine, alcohol, stay away from it. Now, the other thing that I like to caution people on, tips and tricks, is no intense exercise. You have to realize your body is already under so much stress. And like I physically couldn't lift weights until like a year to a year and a half after quitting cannabis because my body was under so much stress from recovering from this condition. Like if I would work out, I would literally like be in horrible pain and then have fatigue for like 7 days after. It looked like Lyme disease. It looked like an autoimmune disease. It wasn't. It was my body needing to recover from CHS. So please, no intense weightlifting, no intense yoga, maybe walking, maybe swimming, very low impact, very moderate, very low frequency exercise just to keep yourself moving. But now is not the time to overburden your body by changing your exercise regimen and doing all this crazy stuff. And on nutrition too, keep it simple. Think like the brat diet. This is like banana, rice, applesauce, bread, or toast. Like plain, maybe a little bit of butter on it, okay? I think journaling your symptoms can help, especially if you're starting to see an improvement and you're tracking your THC detox with a product like that Exploro makes that I put in the pinned comment in the video description links. I think journaling and just keeping track of what you're going through can help keep you motivated and accountable. I think talk therapy, talking to someone who's been through this before to help guide you and reassure you that things are gonna get better, because when you first quit, things can often feel like they're getting worse. I think that's super important. And just having someone to reassure you that you're doing the right thing, that you're not losing your mind, can go a long way. Now, if you are struggling with this and you need help, if you don't get the Exploro kit, if you don't do any of that, check out our free guide. The link's in the video description to overcoming CHS. We make supplements, a chewing gum supplement that I believe to be beneficial. It has KSM 66-ashwagandha and N-acetylcysteine that can help reduce stress and anxiety. KSM 66-ashwagandha helps to reduce the overall impact of stress on the body, which when you're quitting cannabis and you have CHS, your body's under a lot of stress. N-acetylcysteine has been shown to be very good at alleviating symptoms of brain fog, alleviating inflammatory conditions in the lungs if you've been smoking cannabis or vaping it. And even more so, NAC has been shown to be very good at helping to control blood sugar levels and reduce cravings for cannabis. We're the only people in the world that make a chewing gum that we sell here right on our YouTube shopping. And then all in all, if you really need help, be sure to check out our one-on-one coaching programs or our group coaching programs, all found in the links in the pinned comment. I'd be happy to work with you and help you any way that I can. Until next time, guys, I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome.